I want to talk about commuting and why, in the context of software engineering, I think commuting is honestly a big waste of time. And this obviously only applies for our context of software engineering. I get that it's different for other jobs, but again, we're only talking about software engineering. Um, and I went out on a bike ride today, and I went over the part on the bike ride. There's a bridge that goes over one of the highways, and I went over the bridge on my bike, and this is like 4:30, and this was at the time when people will be getting back from work, driving home from the city, things like that. And I just see a line of cars that are just backed up for as far as I can see because they had a lane on the highway sectioned off. And I turned the other way and it was the same thing all the way down. And I know where the next exit is, and I know how far the next exit is from where they're coming. And they have, I mean, I can't even imagine how long that adds to the commute because it's not a super, populated area we're in. So there's not a ton of exits, and the city is like 45 minutes away. So they probably just added an hour onto their commute because of this backup. And what dawned on me is that, for one thing, I used to have to do that commute. I used to have to drive into downtown. It would take me 35 minutes with no traffic. If there was traffic at all, it didn't matter. If there was a fender bender, if there was, someone driving slow, it would add on 25 minutes to the commute. So now I'm already at basically an hour. And if there was a bad accident, it would be an hour and 15 minutes. And that's just to get there, let alone to get back. It was the same thing. And that's so basically I had an hour and a half of my day reserved just for driving, just to getting to my job, an hour and a half, 2 hours. And that's a huge chunk of of your day. Like my day was not spent well because I had to allocate that much time just to sit in my car to go and sit at a desk behind a screen to do my job that I could do at home. And what made it difficult in my mind was that when we were in the office, we would still have virtual meetings on Zoom and everybody was at their desk. Like, what's the point? Like, why am I here? Like, I get that I can talk to people and, maybe get lunch with them or have the occasional conversation, but that's like few and far between. So, but for the core function of my job, why am I here? Like, there's no reason for me to drive this far, spend this much on gas, vehicles, it just a lot of other things to get here. Honestly, vehicle maintenance and gas is unbelievably expensive. I mean, at the time, I had a truck, and that gets about 18 miles per gallon, and I get that. Okay, you can get a Civic or something that maybe gets 35, or a Prius that gets like 50. I get that, but either way, you still have to buy gas, which is expensive, and then you have to maintain the vehicle, which is several $1,000s at least a year. So it's just a huge amount of money. But if I can make the same amount of money working from home, not have to pay for all of that, save on gas, and then also probably save on food because now you're not tempted to go out to eat as much because other people are going out to eat. You save a whole lot of money. I mean, thousands. I mean, I probably save about $6,000 to $7,000 just because I work from home. Like going out is optional now. Like if I want to go work somewhere else, I can go to the coffee shop, library, anywhere I want to, bring my laptop, and there I go. I can work. And so frustrating. And when I saw that as I was riding my bike, I just, all those thoughts and feelings came back to me. Like, I will do anything I possibly can to avoid ever having to sit in that line of cars ever again on a daily basis. It is just not worth it at all. It just, it's just so draining. It's just so like soul crushing when you had a long day already. Then you look at your maps and then you see, oh, there was an accident. Now it's going to take me an hour or 5 minutes. Now I'm not going to get home until 6:30 or 7 o'clock. You know what I mean? Like it was just so draining. I remember so to try to combat some of the crazy traffic or having to face the crazy traffic, I would wake up at 5:30 and then be out the door no later than 6 o'clock. So that way I could at least get with the flow of the beginning of traffic, because there was still a ton of traffic at 6 because this was going into downtown. And a lot of people, I think, have the same idea as me. Well, I'm just going to leave earlier to beat traffic. No, you would have to leave at like 4 a.m. to beat any semblance of traffic. So I would get on the highway at 6, and I would get into the office 6:45 usually, and then I would be out the door of the office no later than 3:30, and then on the way home it usually was pretty light usually. But there was a crazy merge from like 6 lanes down to three. It was nuts. It was such a bad setup. It was horrible. I saw more road rage around this area than I've ever seen in my whole life. And I did that for a year, but my internships prior to that, over the course of 2 summers, were also in downtown as well, in different cities, and I had to drive, again, 8 o'clock, 8:30, because I had to start at a more formal time for the internship. And it was like on a T, like to a T. When as soon as you got to this exit, you came to a stop, and then you were just bumper to bumper the whole way until you got to the office. But that's reality. Like that's like every day. Like that doesn't change. That's like as constant as buying groceries. It's like, okay, today I'm going to buy groceries and also get stuck at this exact time on the highway, and then add on this much time to my daily commute. It was just so unnecessary for this job. And I get that. Okay, there. It's not all just about it's not all just about the commute, right? I completely understand that there's a lot of benefits to going into the office environment and being with people and having that relationship in person, hanging out with your team, talking to them. I completely understand. I'm not saying that that's bad. That's a good thing. But in order to get that with a job that can be done completely online, I just it's asking people to commute is a tough ask, in my opinion, just because it adds so much overhead with it. Money, time, and but time is the more important thing, right? You don't get that time back. For me, okay, if I got an hour and a half every day, that's an hour and a half. That's a massive amount of time. You could work on some crazy project. You could read a book. You could do something really productive aside from sitting in traffic being super stressed out. And okay, yeah, you could say, oh, well, you can read an audiobook in the car. You're absolutely right. But it's a super stressful environment when you're driving in that amount of traffic and you just want to get home. I don't know how much you're retaining from that audiobook. And I would listen to podcasts. I would listen to music sometimes. And honestly, like it was just a way for me to not focus on what was happening around me on the road. And I would, get home and pack my lunch for the next day and then do it again. But if you're at home already, you don't have to go through, you don't have to like, okay, get your vehicle ready. You don't have to like pre-pack your lunch. You don't have to do these things because you're already at home. You can go and make food when you need food. Like you can start at whatever time. If you want to start at 5 a.m., start at 5 a.m. Like there's no reason to. But if you start at 5 a.m. in the office and you're the first person to get there before security, you might not even be able to get in. So it's kind of limiting in that sense. But again, I don't want this to sound. This is specifically in the context of software engineering. This is a job that is done on a laptop, right? Like wherever my laptop goes, my work comes with me, right? Like that is where it's done. I can connect anywhere in the world and do my job anywhere. And asking to take a job like that and confine it to a desk behind a screen in an open office is just it's, in my opinion, is a super tough ask in 2024. I mean, we understand that we can do this stuff anywhere, and if you don't trust people to do this at home, that's a different issue. You have to trust the people, obviously, but their job, the primary function of their job, can be done anywhere. It doesn't have to be chained to this desk, and especially not if meetings are virtual. if meetings are virtual, there's no reason to be in there for the job. I mean, zero. I mean, why? I remember one time I got on the highway and there was a super bad, uh, I think wreck or something on the highway. I didn't see it, so I don't know what happened. But they had to close the highway, and everyone had to route off the highway into onto all these side roads, and it took me over an hour and a half to work. Honestly, I don't know why I didn't turn around and just go home at that point. I truthfully I don't know why. We weren't working remote, so obviously like that's not gonna fly, right? I still had to get there. So, but it was just that was horrible. I didn't get to work for so late, right? And then you have to stay to make up that time. And so it's like it was super frustrating. And honestly, like the road systems are so congested everywhere. They're so busy. The amount of cars being added onto the roads every year is a staggeringly high number. It's a serious problem, as well as how many cars are being sent to landfills, and that just the rising number of just waste from all these vehicles that either are just trashed or they're just built to low spec and they don't last, and then they get sent to a landfill. This is a rising number. It's very concerning, and also the overall amount of pollution and carbon emissions emitted from all these vehicles driving into the city to do these remote jobs is very high, and it's only going to get worse if we don't do something. I'm not saying that that is the primary reason why we should do remote, but it is certainly a contributing factor. And for this job, I just don't see the argument for having to go into the office to do the core function of the job. Like, I'll concede some things, right? If you really don't trust people, just have them use. There's many ways to see what your people are doing. Just use one of those, right? Like that. If you really think that they're not doing this stuff at the office, you don't think they're watching YouTube on a different tab, or you don't think they're listening to like a Twitch stream or something, or watching Netflix on a tab. I mean, people take half-hour bathroom breaks or taking hour lunches, back to back, right? And people are walking around talking to each other. So I don't know, because if you ever see people at the office, they're taking a lot of breaks. I would say that you may take less breaks if you're at home, just because you're in an environment where it's comfortable and you have the luxury of, okay, well, I just I really can't focus right now on doing programming. I need to take a step back. Let me go for a walk and come back. You can do that because there's no, the time is up to you, right? You've signed on to do X number of hours, right? Just get that done however you need to. As long as you're fulfilling what you signed up to do, that's the main thing. If you want to start at 4 a.m., then start at 4 a.m. Especially if you have teammates who work in different time zones, that might actually work better. What if they're 3 hours, like, what if they're 3 hours ahead of you, right? Like, or behind you? It doesn't, like, if you work with a team that's all 3 hours behind you, but you start like early, well, does that work? Like, maybe start later. So there's just a lot. There should be, in my opinion, a lot of flexibility, because I think in order to make systems that function well, they need to be made in creative spaces, right? That people can feel comfortable and just be able to think broadly about topics, and trying to take that and push it into this like archaic model of work in a 9 to 5 job in an office setting. I just don't know if that's I just don't know if that's going to work anymore. I don't know if that's a convincing argument moving into 2024. I mean, I just don't know how you make that case, right? People say, oh, people are more productive in the office. What is that based on? I mean, truthfully, if we want to introduce time tracking, we can do that. I'll track my time for however I'm spending it. It'll be match it up to what I'm doing in the office. I mean, if there's a large enough discrepancy, we can fix it. But I would question the productivity, I would question the claim that people are less productive at home versus in the office. I really would, because how many times are there those kind of like just off the cuff conversations that are like largely unsolicited that just kind of derail you from where your mind's at in a problem, where you're thinking. Sometimes in programming, it's like you try and try and try a bunch of stuff, and then you think you're not going to figure it out, but until you try it like again, and sometimes it's weird. It's like you get into the last implementation of that of the iteration of your problem, or your iteration, your solution, and it's like the last line of code. You're like right there. You're about to get it, but you don't know it, and then you get interrupted, and then you've lost where you're at. I know it sounds like, but that's true. That happens, and what would that happen at home? Maybe if you get like a Slack or a Teams message, yeah, sure. But in office, someone's right there. They could slide their chair over to you and start talking to you. It might happen, and it's harder, especially in an open office, to have any privacy, right? To even think. My problem with open offices is not that they don't work. Okay, obviously, companies are doing really well. Most companies are moving to most companies are moving to borderline cafeterias. Okay, have you seen companies are practically putting just tables out with chairs with no even barriers anymore. It's that's taking it a little too extreme. I don't know if I agree with that. You may as well go eat at IKEA, right? Like let's go to IKEA's lunchroom if we're gonna work in a cafeteria. But this whole model of open offices, I just can't. Companies, I get that they work, right? Companies are doing well. I get that. But again, for software engineering, does it work better? I mean, does it really? What are we basing this off of? Because the sales and HR department, they're going to love the open offices, and I understand why. But for a lot of software engineers who I would say tend to be more on the, at least for me, I'm more of a reserved person. I'm more of an introverted person. Uh, I have a hard time focusing when I can see someone's, the corner of someone's eye right next to me, right? Like I need to be in my own space to think properly. And when you're just there trying to look, busy all the time because you feel like you're being watched because your manager sits 2 seats away from you and can look at you all, I just can't think. And I just have to go somewhere. Like I just take, okay, if I'm going to go to the office, but then take my laptop and not even use my desk, and I'm going to go sit in the, the lunchroom or the break room. Why can't I do that at home? And I just feel moving forward, we're seeing more and more companies having to bring their people back into the office, whether it's the hybrid schedule for, 2 days at home, 3 days in the office. Some places are bringing their employees back permanently in the office. And I really question what the incentive is beyond maintaining the investment of the building. Because if there's no people in the building, right, there's not, they spend all this money on the building, right? We need to use it. We're seeing a lot of buildings largely empty that are not being used because people have shifted from home. And when people are asked to come back in the office, they don't want to, so they look elsewhere. But it's the fact that, we have to ask the question, well, why do they not want to come back? Maybe it's because the 9 to 5 really rigid schedule in the office doesn't work for a modern lifestyle. Okay, if you have to if you pick up your kids at 3, how do you do that at a 9 to 5? You can't, unless you finish the rest of your day at home working remotely. But then it prompts the question, well, why can't I work remotely the full day? That's what we're facing today. And especially as schools are shifting their times that when they start, right? It's only getting more and more difficult to build our lives in these 9 to 5 models that were based on an era before the computer was even popularized, before it was even used in a workplace setting on a personal level. Now we have all this technology, but we're still acting as though we don't. And it's just so frustrating. I hope that we can come to a spot where remote work becomes more respected. and trusted, and we figure out a way to build trust organically with people, right? Like that's the whole thing. Is it's we're in this game of trying to build trust with people, right? If I'm on a team, how do I build trust with the people I'm working around, right? And especially, okay, if they have something going on, well, okay, then take care of it, right? But like, it just is harder to do that when you're stuck in an office building at a desk and there's no flexibility. I just people need flexibility because it makes them feel like a human being, right? Like you can't to say that we're like, oh, we have to stay at the desk for this long, and it just I'm struggling to see the validity of that in software engineering in modern times. And I'm not saying that I'm yes, okay, there are cases where remote work probably does not work for some people because they can't focus. I understand that. Then go and work in an office. But people who genuinely do work better remotely, I, and it just trying to make them work in an office is is a tough ask. And I understand why people are looking for remote work and why those jobs are so competitive. And for me, it's kind of wrapping this whole conversation up. The commute was a huge factor in why I wanted to look for remote. That commute was horrible. And I know people say, well, you're young. Yeah, you're right. I start like, you know, what did I get? I was what was I 20 21 or 22? I forget. Yeah, you're 21 or 22 when I got my first software developer job. So I commuted for a year. But then, when I was 20 and then 19, I think I had the internships where I commuted into downtown. It's like, okay, yeah, I guess I haven't been commuting. I commuted for 3 years, 4 years. And people say, well, that's not that long. You're still young. Like, you'll get used to it. Yeah, but why do I have to get used to it? Like, what if it's just not a good setup? And so I when I was driving or riding my bike past all those cars just sitting there, it just a thought just came to me. I'm like, I will do anything that I can possibly to never have to sit in that line of traffic again for a job that I can do at home. And probably not probably I do a better job when I'm at home. It's just a fact. I've seen all my advancements from promotions to new job all from at home. Just the stuff I'm able to do better, just in a better environment that's more comfortable for me. And I get that it's triggering to some people talking about remote work because people are very adamant that remote work is bad, and people okay, it might be bad for some people, but for some people it's genuinely better. And I think that we have to get to a spot where it's more respected and widely accepted form of legitimate work. And again, a lot of opinions about it, but that's just kind of my 2 cents about the matter. But again, specifically for software engineering, I'm not talking about any other job. I'm talking about software developers, software engineers, whatever you want to call it. This job, and this job, I think should be remote. And but that's it. The commute really is the biggest thing for me. And I think the next one would be just the amount of money you save. And let's face it, things are super expensive now, and they're only getting more expensive. And any little bit you save goes a long way. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.